Hey family, I have everything laid out here that I need to bring to room temperature. All the ingredients. I have the goat cheese coming to room temperature to make it more pliable, easier to work with, so I can add the herbs and give it time to infuse its flavors. Because if we just try and mix the goat cheese straight cold, just throw it in there, it's going to turn kind of crumbly, and that's not the texture we want. We want more of like a creamy texture, true texture of the goat cheese. So we're going to bring it up to temperature, bring the temperature up, add the herbs in, and put it back in the refrigerator so that it goes back to its original texture. Then we're going to wash and season our meat, let it to come to room temperature so that it will retain its moisture after cooking. We're not going to use the pepper though. We're going to hold off on pepper until after the steak is cooked, and then we'll add the pepper so that it doesn't dry it out. But this is pretty much it. It's really simple ingredients, but it's decadent. Okay family, so we are going to open our goat cheese. Now that we've got it a lot more pliable. And then we will add the herbs. I'm really bad at measuring. I just measure to taste. So I'm not going to be able to help you out with that at all. Especially when it comes to herbs. I think herbs are more of a preference. So there's that. And we have our Italian seasoning, which consists of oregano, marjoram, thyme, rosemary, and sage. Now I don't care for sage too much, so I'm not going to use too much of this, but I'd say that that's probably a quarter teaspoon, maybe half a teaspoon for the entire package. Again, of the mixed Italian seasoning. We have basil, which is one of my favorites, so I'm really going to pop the top on this one and just kind of shake it out. Probably a teaspoon. We're not going to add any salt to it, mainly because there's already salt in the lemon pepper seasoning. It's one of the ingredients listed, and we don't want to take away the flavor or change the flavor of the goat cheese. We just want to add to it. So I'd say probably a quarter teaspoon, maybe a half. But the lemon is really, really strong. So we're just going to mix it up and then put it back in the refrigerator. I am just seasoning the steak. We've already completed the goat cheese. So this is Worcestershire sauce. And I'm going a little heavy-handed on it because this is the bottom side. So it's going to have to kind of suck the flavor up instead of having it sink in. So I was seasoned a little heavier on the bottom side. So I do 2 passes of seasoning salt, Johnny's. No, nothing better, nothing better. And garlic powder, 2 passes. Onion powder, 2 passes. And we have my pepper. This is what I use for pepper. But again, we're not going to use that until the end, after it's already cooked, so it doesn't dry our meat out. We're going to flip it over, season the opposite side, which would be our top side. So I'll just do it. So we're going to flip it over. And hold on, now I have to wash my hands. Damn it, hold on. Okay, so We are going to Worcestershire sauce this steak. And we're going to go a little lighter because this is the upside. So all the flavor is already going down, sinking into the meat. So we don't have to do it as heavy. So we'll probably do 1 pass of the garlic, 1 pass of the seasoning salt, and 1 pass of the onion pepper. And now we are going to wrap them up and allow them to come to room temperature, fully come to room temperature before we start cooking. Okay, so we have everything bagged up, marinating, and we are going to allow it to come to room temperature, well, the steak to come to room temperature. We're going to put our goat cheese back in the refrigerator so that it goes back to its original texture and infuses the flavor of the herbs again. But I did forget to mention the accent. Another reason I didn't use salt. This is very salty. It says it's not salty, but it has the flavor of salt and like lemon. It's really good. And I don't know what it is exactly, but I added about not even a 1/4 teaspoon because it's really, really strong and I want to keep the integrity of the goat cheese. So I did put a little bit of accent in the goat cheese, and again, we're going to allow them to come to room temperature, her to go in the refrigerator. As I mentioned earlier, they're seasoned and ready to go. We're just getting our pan to blazing hot so we can sear the steak, which is going to help lock in the moisture that is already in the steak and lock the seasoning and flavor in. And then we will make our brown butter reduction, or brown butter sauce, I think it is. Is it a reduction or a sauce? It's brown butter sauce, yeah. Anyway, simultaneously. So this is just a little quick method that I've learned, or technique that I've learned over the years. And yeah, this is again going to go by very quickly. The steak is only going to cook for a total of 5 minutes. So honestly, I don't even have to really pause it, because by the time it goes in, it'll be coming out so quickly to have that perfect medium degree steak. So we're not going for rare, not for this, but which is my favorite, medium rare, but for this recipe, medium is better. I never thought I'd say that, but it's the truth. Okay, so we have our balsamic vinegar brought to a roaring boil, right? And then we added our sugar, which was approximately 1/2 cup of sugar. We brought it to a boil and then stirred it and turned it down. Like I mentioned earlier, I think I mentioned that it cooks for 10 to 20 minutes before the sauce is at that thickened consistency that you're used to. Not thick, but thickened consistency. You can see it's already starting to stick to the spoon. It's not as watery as it was when we first poured it in. And again, it's at a medium-low temperature. But this is we're going to start this probably 10, maybe 15 minutes before we would start the steak, because it takes 10 to 20 minutes to cook the sauce, and the steak is literally going to take 5 minutes for a medium temperatured steak. Not medium rare, but medium temperatured. Our balsamic vinegar, it has already reduced by over half at this point. You can see where our original starting line was approximately here when I poured it in, and at this point it's less than half of what it was. It's more of a syrup consistency, I would say. You can see how it's sticking to the spoon versus earlier when it was more liquidy. We're going to turn it off, remove it from the heat, and it's going to continue to thicken as it cools. I'm afraid I may have overcooked it a little bit. Not really overcooked it per se, but overcooked it. I think it might be a little too thick. And if that is the case, we can always add balsamic vinegar to it to thin it out at the end. It's not a big deal at all, thank God. But like I said, we're going to take it off of the heat at this point, set it to the side, toss it to the side, and we have our pan that is blazing hot, as you can see. And we are going to take our steaks and start the process. Again, it's going to be 5 minutes. 5 minutes to completely cook the steak. So let's go ahead and get this started. That's steak 1 down. Steak 2. And we will be back to flip them over in 2 minutes. But in the meantime, we're going to turn the temperature down on the steak to medium to complete the rest of the cooking process. But we want it to be hot to sear the steak on initial contact. And again, in 2 minutes, we'll flip it and continue cooking on the other side for the last 3 minutes. Okay, at this point, we are 2 minutes in, and we need to flip the steak. We don't want to pierce our steak because we don't want to release the juice, but I take the furthest corner possible when I flip it. So again, trying to keep as much moisture in the steak as possible. Alright, so now we are on the last minute of cooking our steak. So the tabs of butter for our butter sauce, brown butter sauce, is gonna go on top of the steak initially. Sorry, I had to get a new fork. On top of the steak initially. And we'll save the last bit of butter for after we remove it from the pan. And we are going to remove the steak from the pan using the same technique we used to flip it, which is to pierce the steak at the furthest corner possible. Now this is where we let the steak rest. So we added the cold cream to the cold pan, turned it on high, and now the cream is going to cook the raw egg. That is where we are. Then we will plate our food and be good to go. But again, we're cooking the egg with no oil. The only thing cooking the egg is the cream. So it leaves it like this really sweet, not really sweet, not overtly sweet, but it has a really sweet texture to the white. Leaving the yolk still runny in the middle. Yeah, it's pretty scrumptious. Okay, so we have the goat cheese, the herb-infused goat cheese. Now we have our balsamic vinegar and our brown butter that we drained off of the steak and out of the pan. So to serve it, we are going to take a drizzle of the brown butter sauce. Okay, so we have the goat cheese now, and it's still creamy. I think it's still creamy because of the whipping when we put the herb in it earlier on, and then we brought it back to room temperature. So we'll put a couple dollops on top of the steak. Woo! And then we will top it off with our balsamic sauce. Balsamic reduction. Which, after you reduce it, it actually tastes more like caramel. It starts to caramelize. The sugar in the vinegar starts to caramelize, and it literally tastes like caramel, like a tart caramel. It's very, very good, especially in this recipe. So with the balsamic sauce, we're gonna drizzle it on our steak and a little bit on our eggs because it's good. Obviously, you can tell which one's mine. Mommy. Huh? I see, Mama. I see. Alrighty. Okay. So bless you. So there we are. Perfectly cooked medium steak. And the taste test. Babe, want to taste test your steak? Jocelyn.
That's delicious.
Per usual.
Mommy!
Eden.
Mommy!
Eden.
Ew! A ball, mommy! Mommy!
Mm-hmm.